morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you this morning on WJOP-LP Newburyport at FM 96.3 on Channel 9 and on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I'm so pleased this morning to have the opportunity to interview Dave Rogers, new editor of the Newburyport Daily News. Dave, welcome, and thank you so much for taking time to visit the show.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for having me here.
You know what, Dave? congratulations, first of all, on being named the editor.
Thank you.
But also, Newburyport is phenomenally lucky. It's something of a miracle for a city the size of Newburyport to have its own daily newspaper. So, huge thanks to you and everybody who works at the Daily News for enabling Newburyport to have a newspaper. It's a wonderful thing to have local journalism. So
folks
thanks
here
for that.
really love local journalism. It's very important to them.
Absolutely. It's a precious resource, and we appreciate it. Well, Dave, I've read a little about your background, and I know you've been working in newsrooms since 1998. And so I was curious to find out what drew you to journalism as a career.
All right, so this is a completely random event. I was in rock and roll bands in my 20s, and my father could sense I'm a little aimless and said, I see there's a company needs an obituary writer in a newsroom. I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And this was in Needham back in 1998. And as soon as I got in the newsroom, I didn't love writing obituaries. But I loved the energy and just the chaos of a newsroom, and it got me hooked immediately. And as soon as I did a year there writing obituaries, I started writing features and got my first reporting gig and stuff like that. So since then, I've just been hooked.
Well, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Every now and then, as we were just talking, the universe finds you with something.
Correct. So, I totally agree with that.
I'm curious, was there any particular journalist that inspired you at the time or along the way?
No, again, I've been writing all my life, but I never considered myself a news guy until I got into a newsroom. So I didn't have any, Woodward and Bernstein, I didn't really get into that kind of stuff. It was just, I don't have a style I follow. It's just, so I don't have any, sorry, but no.
No, you don't have, you don't have to have one. It sounds like the heart of the story is the energy just, it was a good fit for you.
Oh, yeah.
And really, the energy there energized you.
Correct.
And that's how we get to have you as the editor now. So it's a happy story.
Yes, sure.
Well, you've been with the Daily News since 2010.
Right.
And I've read that you've covered just about every beat imaginable, from the police and the courts to politics, entertainment, and business. I'm curious to find out, do you have a favorite beat?
Well, my first love was the police beat.
Yeah.
And then I went to court, district court after that, and they kind of meshed together, obviously. Yeah. And so those are my favorites. And I still go to court a couple times a week to get stories. Yeah. So I can't get that out of me. I do write stories for the paper still, and my favorites are those. So
yeah. What is it about those stories that captivate your interest?
They're real life in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. There's a popular saying that in local politics and in local news, 10% of the population make 90% of the noise. And,
that's a good saying. Yeah.
But in court, it's pretty much, it is what it is. And you see good, and you see bad. You see, I can tear up sometimes during court. It can be really emotional.
Yeah.
But it's real, and it feels, there is an energy to that, and the process is fascinating, and I like the whole process, I should say.
Well, I guess interesting the way you describe it. It's sort of the theater of human nature, for good, bad, or whatever.
Yeah, look, so there are folks who this justice system is flawed, and there are always things they could do better. And that's part of my job, too, is to be a watchdog and to see what they're doing and report that. And there are lots of things, I shouldn't say lots of things, but there are things that could be better. And that's part of my job as covering the court. And it's not all about the people, it's about the process, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's why we need journalists.
Yeah.
To keep everybody honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, has there been a story or two, either in Police in the Courts or one of the other beats you've covered, that has especially engaged or impacted you, that's kind of stayed with you over time?
Well, I mean, if people read my stuff over the years, they know I like stories that are just kind of offbeat or a little bit wonky or weird. I like funky stories a lot. But I mean, if I'm talking about impactful, I like to. It's important to me to write about domestic violence.
Yeah.
And let people know this is not just something you see on TV or hear about once in a while. It's everywhere. It's prevalent, and there are so many victims and so many folks who just. It's heartbreaking to see folks who go in there and then they decide not to testify against someone because they're afraid or they don't want to get them in trouble, and then all that stuff's really important to me, and I want to make sure that stuff gets out there too. So I don't know. That's talk about. I don't have a particular story that still resonates, but I have a theme that definitely does.
Absolutely. And, I've had the privilege of talking with Suzanne Dubus of the Geiger Center a number of times on the show. And, she makes the same points you do, that sadly, it's always with us. And there are many tragic stories that accompany it. And, of course, her work is all about empowering people to try and make change, and that's what you're talking about too.
Well, we're really lucky to have the Geiger Center here.
Absolutely
I mean, it's just an amazing resource for the community.
It's a treasure.
Yeah,
it really is. Well, thank you for that, Dave, for keeping the journalistic eye on that story, because you're right, it's sadly perennially with us, and it's so important to make sure that people don't forget about it.
Right.
So
that's part of my job.
That's well done. Well, I'm curious to find out, Dave, because you obviously, as we've been saying, you were a beat reporter for a long time, covering a lot of different beats, but now you're the editor of the Daily News.
Right.
So how has your job changed then from being a reporter? What's harder or what's easier, if anything, or what's more fun, or if anything?
So it's fun to be able to dictate a little more about and have a vision and see it come to fruition every day. So that's a lot of fun. And I'll be honest, more folks call me back now that I'm the editor, and so that's more. I feel a little more powerful in that sense, that I can do.
Yeah.
I have more of a say in things than I used to. And reporters, you're basically hoping people call you back and on time, and you're like, oh, what do I do now? And I'm kind of screwed, but there's a little more. I have a little more weight.
Yeah.
And I don't mind carry up. What's the word? I don't mind pushing it or carrying it or getting it out.
The responsibility.
Yeah. So, and I've said this before. People ask me. I try to focus on doing certain thing, and then all of a sudden there are 10 things that hit me from the side. Like I'm trying to get a task done, and I'm getting a phone call. Like someone complained about the comics not being great in the paper, and I'm like, that's really new to me too. I didn't expect. I never got calls about comics being not great in a newspaper. So that's a challenge. And people coming in the office, I'm the face of the paper in a way, so people coming in, if they have problems from circulation they usually come to me first, and I have to direct them or take care of them myself. And so there's a lot more community engagement, and it's random. People just come in my office. I mean, not barging, but they come into the newsroom and they say, "Hey, help me out," and I try to do that.
Well, that's interesting. So the perk is that people return your calls.
Well, it's more. I just feel more engaged.
Yeah.
I feel more. I have bigger sense of purpose.
Oh yeah, which would be very gratifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And as you say, you get to see the whole thing come together every day.
Right.
On the other hand, people come to you with everything that they might be concerned about or upset about lands in your office, and
Correct.
so but then you can delegate some of it.
Yeah, I mean, so when I started the Daily News, we had 5.5 reporters. Now we have down to 2. I'm looking to hire one more person. If anyone's interested, I'm looking for another reporter. But so it's a big challenge to get every part of we have a big readership, lots of communities.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get everyone represented the way I'd like to. That is a big challenge as an editor,
Yeah.
because I mean, Newbury is a very hopping town in a lot of ways. They're very engaged.
Yeah.
And we have a correspondent who's covering Newbury now, but she also works with West Newbury. So it's really we're stretched very thin is what I'm getting at. But,
Yeah.
So that's one reason why I write stories too. I do
Yeah.
enjoy it, but I also feel like, so that's fun.
But just to get the coverage that you want for all the
Correct.
for the greater Newburyport communities,
Correct.
I'm understanding that it's challenging when you don't have enough resources
Right.
to get out there.
I mean, the company's doing everything they can. It's
Yeah.
not the company.
Yeah.
It's just what it is.
Yeah.
And it's the news business has its struggles over the years.
Yeah,
We're not immune to that.
Yeah.
And but I think we're putting out a great paper these days. I mean, I learned a lot from my former bosses, John McCone and Richard Lodge. They taught me a lot. Talk about getting me ready for this job.
Yeah.
I would not know what to do without their mentorship in a way. They didn't like hold my hand, but they were there. They told me, they showed me how it works, and I'm a sponge, and I always absorb stuff, and they were great. So I couldn't have done without them.
It's great to have good mentors,
Yeah.
and it's great to be a sponge and to pick up all those lessons that
Yeah.
they've modeled for you. That sounds great. Yeah. Well, Dave, the Daily News now has editorials, of course.
Right.
And you also have a column. You had a really interesting column in today's paper about the issue of banned books.
Right.
So I'm curious now, do you also write the editorials as well as your column? And if you don't, who does write those these days?
So we have a pool of writers within the company, and they take turns writing editorials.
Ah, okay.
So I don't write the editorials. I mean, I can, and but I enjoy the column format more. I just like being able to say, I spoke to Sean Gallagher, the superintendent of schools, or the mayor, or a counselor at large. I mean, it's harder to do that. You gotta be, an editorial is very formal,
Yes.
and
yeah.
a column can be a little more loosey-goosey, and I like that. I try to. My first few columns, I was talking about myself more than I felt like it's a work in progress, and I'm trying to make it make it good for everyone.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it's. I think it's important to have an editor whose voice is in the paper at least once a week. I think it's something that I want to be held accountable, and I want to let people. I mean, when you talk about being a reporter, I could not say how I felt.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
I had to keep it to myself. I may tell my friends and maybe some coworkers, but as an editor, that's one perk is I can say how I feel about things,
Yeah.
and I'm okay to do that. The challenge is when we were short-staffed and Jim Sullivan was on vacation, or I was down to one reporter for a little while, I had to write stories, and it understandably blurred some lines about is this a news story? Is this a column?
Yeah.
But I'm like, I got to fill the paper, and this is what I'm the only one here, and it was tough. So that was,
I can imagine.
the first month was very challenging because I was down. It was just me and Jim Sullivan, and that was hard.
That sounds hard.
Oh, yeah. It was
Yeah. Because I will, the paper read the same. I didn't know there were just two of you.
Oh, my God.
So good on you and Jim.
Thanks. Thank you.
Well, I'm interested in finding out then, now that you have the column and you're finding your voice, and clearly you know, as you were saying, you feel like it's important for people to hear from the editor
Right.
at least once a week. How do you decide what topics you want to write about each week?
Well, I mean, the beauty of being the editor is I can write about anything I want to. I can write about rock and roll if I want to. I'm dying to do that at some point. But I generally just follow what's going on in the news. And a lot of the columns come from just things that happen in the government or in the schools, or in this case from the banned book week, and a response from a nationally known Twitter account that has basically targeted Newburyport. So I'm like, oh, I just start feeling my emotions rise, and I want to get something out there, and it's important topics about banned books. So that seemed like a no-brainer to me. Yeah. So it's pretty much dictates on what comes before me. Yeah. But don't worry, I'll be doing some rock and roll comments at some point.
Oh, good. I'm going to ask you about rock and roll at the end. Right. I didn't want to miss the opportunity to learn about Vanishing Point. Well, I understand what you're saying. I mean, there's no shortage of news constantly.
Right.
from local to regional to national, and so the universe provides numerous topics. There's no shortage. I'm curious to find out the columns that you've written so far. Is there one that's gotten the greatest response, either affirmative or critiquing, and were you surprised by that?
I'm not surprised. Part of the job is to be able to take criticism and to weather storms. And when I write columns, and when anyone writes a column, there are storms that come after it. The column about the mayor's plan to reorganize the Parks Department.
Yeah.
I wrote a column a few months ago, right when I started, about that, and that created a big storm. And you get lots of different opinions, a lot of them against what I'm saying, some for it, and the key is just to say, this is the storm, don't respond, just it will pass, and then you move on, and don't take it personally. So that one, I'd say that's the one that generated the most interest. The one about my concerns about Connie Preston, council at large, not disclosing everything when she was talking about the short-term rental unit issue, I got a lot of comments about that too, mostly, thankfully, in favor of what I wrote, which is nice. So I didn't. The storm was different. It was going out to sea and not into me, so to speak.
Which is good. But I like the way you put that, a storm. But that's freedom of speech.
Oh yeah.
That's a free press. So the Daily News, again, another reason to cherish the Daily News is it gives people a forum to express themselves. And I wanted to follow up on that a bit because, Greater Newburyport is a terrific place to live. I moved here from Arlington 5 years ago, and I feel lucky every day. I give thanks to be living in Newburyport. And so people are very passionate about Newburyport, and they can have strong opinions and be very vocal about, almost anything, Dave. And you're in a position to hear those voices, I've been saying, through opinion pieces and letters. And I'm curious to decide, what criteria do you use in deciding what letters to print or other opinion pieces? Is it a diversity of viewpoints, the frequency of viewpoints, the quality of the writing, or the coherence of the argument, or other things?
That's a very complex question. But so I want to get as many voices in as possible within reason. I am very, my radar goes off when I feel like I'm being part of a national agenda, and I want to be used to further an agenda by people who want to write letters to the editor. And so when I feel that radar come up, I fact check them and I talk to them, I've been getting criticism for that, but I feel it's important to make sure that the motive of the letter writer is above board and not trying to. I had a letter writer who sent me some stuff, and I fact-checked it, and there were some things that were wrong with it, and I feel like, my goodness, if I put that in the paper, it's not going to be good. And so I'm very careful about that. And maybe people might argue that I'm too cautious about that, but it could be. It doesn't have to be right wing or left wing or any wing. It just, if I feel my radar come up, I want to make absolutely sure that it's like kosher. And so I spent a lot of time doing that, believe it or not.
I'll bet,
that's one of the bigger things of my job is to deal with, I should say deal with, but to read these letters, to get to see how it makes me feel, and then check them if I feel like. I said this on a tweet. I like to get more conservative leaning columnists in the paper. We have a lot of great columnists. I enjoy them all. But I would like to see one or two that are more conservative leaning, I don't want to get into names, but but they are. That's something I'd like to see more of.
So you need a new reporter, and you want some more conservative voices.
I'd like at least one columnist that is more conservative leaning. And there's a couple letter writers who I feel like I can trust, and if they want to do it, I'd be like, hey, you want to do this? I mean, I'm tempted to do that, and actually solicit them. And I've offered some folks I've offered some letter writers who I have questions with to write a story for them, and say, hey, I will write a story, or Jim Sullivan will write a story, and they usually decline that. They don't want to get that involved. So anyway, it's not like, sorry, this letter's no good. You're done. It's more like let's change the conversation and.
Well, I can hear, from what you're saying, Dave, that it's a very thoughtful process.
Oh my goodness!
That you go through, and I think that's important. And because opinions are one thing, but sort of misrepresenting, the facts is something else altogether. And it seems as though we live in a time when sometimes people use the phrase post-truth or post-fact, and that seems lamentable.
Well, that's changed a lot since I started. First got in the newsroom. I blame the internet in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That is, people ask me. I think the internet's great, but there's more bad than good in the internet. It's close, but I feel like if the internet went away, there would probably be a little more good than bad. But it's not going to happen, obviously.
No, it's probably not going to happen, but I know exactly what you're saying because, it's always lamentable when you hear somebody saying, for example, about a health issue, well, I read on the internet. You go, oh, no, please, call your doctor.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. That's a big challenge for us journalists, in my opinion, is that we have to... the internet and social media especially. Yeah. And I'm talking about social media mostly. The internet. Yeah. I love Wikipedia and rock and roll sites, but just the social media part is what concerns me the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how I rephrase that.
Yeah, concerns you and many people, but the concerns that many people have about social media are why it's so important that we have journalism.
Right.
And reporters who are trying to present objectively what happened.
Right.
And then you have your column for the opinions about what happened, but it's a distinction that readers are able to discern, and that's important as well.
Right.
So, anyway, I appreciate how thoughtful you are in your approach to the work that you do.
Sure.
Dave.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please do.
There's a feeling among some folks in our subscribers that we are not a daily paper anymore, and I just want to say that we are. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about a piece of paper that gets your hands dirty, okay, we have 4 of those, but we have an e-edition that runs twice a week as well on Monday and Saturday.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Monday. It's Tuesday and Saturday.
Yeah.
I think I know that verbatim. And it's important for folks to know that it's not just throwaway editions. We spend time on those.
Yeah.
I write stories for them, specifically for the web and those e-editions, and you can't get them on print. I'm hoping more folks notice that and say, I want this coverage, and they will try the e-edition, because I think it's a good product, and we'd like more folks to give it a shot at least. So thank you for letting me plug that.
Oh, I'm surprised to know people don't know that, actually, because I get it, and
Well, there are some folks who feel like it's not they subscribe to the e-edition and there's no new content, and I totally understand that. Uh-huh. And then there are print people saying, I don't want to see things happen twice, so I try to keep things like e-edition stories, which will run on the website as well, but then print stories that are in the newspaper with your hands dirty stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, another thing that comes through as you talk, Dave, is that try as you might, you're never going to make everybody happy.
That's exactly right. That's another thing I was going to say. That was on my list of things to say.
Never.
I will not make everyone happy.
And if you were making everybody happy, you wouldn't be a journalist.
Right. Well, that's true. It's good when people on both sides of an issue yell at me. That means we're doing our job.
That's right. Lucky you. Right. So I was curious to find out, shifting gears a little bit, do you have a favorite movie about journalists?
I mean, All the President's Men is a great one.
Yeah, that's a classic, isn't it? Yeah.
I had, people are gonna gasp, maybe not, but I have not seen the Michael Keaton one, Spotlight. I've not seen it, so.
It's excellent.
So
it's really excellent.
That's on my list, but I'm the kind of guy who can watch Goodfellas a billion times. So I watched.
Also a good movie.
So I'm kind of a comfort creature with creature comfort. But so I don't have a favorite.
Well, I would recommend The Post about the Pentagon Papers, the Washington Post, with Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks, which is also excellent.
All
so, right. and all of these movies that we're talking about, you mentioned the appeal to you of the energy of the newsroom.
Sure.
And they're movies that, in my view anyway, they really convey that energy in the newsroom and the collaborative work. Also, the reporters, and they make them very suspenseful movies out of them.
Yeah.
You know, and I always admire that because with both Spotlight and the Post, we know how they turned out.
Right.
You know, but you don't feel like you're sure how it's going to turn out. You feel like, oh, this could be the end of the Washington Post.
Well, I just remember Robert Redford saying, "I'm with the Washington Post," and I was like, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. I bet Woodward and Bernstein probably got their phone calls returned.
Yes.
Well, all right. Now, tell us about the Vanishing Point and your punk rock band, right?
Well,
You
yeah.
play bass guitar. Tell us about it.
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, I've been a rock and roller pretty much since I'm a teenager, and if I didn't do this, I would hope to be in a rock and roll band for be famous rock star. But we're a band that practices in Brighton, and we play gigs once in a while. We're trying to get in the recording studio, and yes, I'm a bass player. I've been doing that since I'm a teen, and I have this nasty habit of buying bass guitars. When I got this job, I'm like, now I can buy another bass guitar. So I spent another like $1,500 on a nice music man.
Oh, I didn't know they were that expensive.
They can be really expensive.
Oh gosh, okay.
So no, I just when I'm not busy, when I decompress, I like to spend time with my girlfriend and my daughter and just hang out with the guys and play rock and roll music, and those are my things I do outside the office.
What a great way to decompress after the storm has descended.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been on, someone asked me if I'm nervous doing these things. I'm like, not really. I mean, I'm on stage.
Oh, yes,
and that's more nervous to me
Yeah.
than something like a radio show. No offense.
Yeah, no, none taken. No, and we're here in the studio, and we can imagine people out there listening,
Right.
but on stage, they're right in front of you.
Right.
There's no pretending.
Exactly. And you screw up. When you screw up on stage, you're like, you pretend like you didn't screw up, and you're like, this. But when you're actually, and it's funny when I get one thing that makes me nervous or antsy and is a challenging part of the job is I wake up every morning, look at the paper, and say, okay, is there any screw-ups or anything happening? Because it happens, and and there from small papers to the biggest ones, there are corrections a lot.
Of course,
and
we're human.
We're human. Right? So we make mistakes and we own them and we correct them and we try to do better next time. I mean, I believe in that. I own my mistakes, and I want my reporters to do that, and we want everyone to feel like, hey, we're responsible, and we're going to try, and we're doing our best, and we're trying our hardest.
Well, Dave, it strikes me that this is true for anyone, but particularly journalists, I guess, when you own up your mistakes, it just enhances your credibility.
I hope so.
So, anyway, Dave, it's been really fun to talk to you.
Yeah,
I think we're really, really lucky to have you as editor of the Daily News. And once again, thank you and everybody at the Daily News for being there and producing the paper every day.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's
thank you.
It's such a valuable resource. So thank you so much. Really fun to talk to you.
Oh, likewise.
Well, that's it for today's show, everybody. Please join us next week on Thursday at 9 for the morning show. Till then, farewell.